So I'll be teaching you how to take accurate body measurements. This is a mannequin, and as most of us know, mannequins are usually perfect in shape. Most of them have this, this curvy look, and everything is just perfect. So this is the mannequin I'm using to show us how to actually take proper measurement. So now, first thing to do, this is normal body measurement. First thing to do is to measure the shoulder. The shoulder measurement starts from this side of the shoulder, from one end of the shoulder to the other end. And for this mannequin now, our shoulder measurement is 16 inches. So you should measure the normal shoulder. So some persons measure from the center of one shoulder to this side. Now this is 8. So if you are doing half, it's still the same thing, it's 8. If you are doing full, it's 16. So it's still the same thing. Then you take your bust circumference. This is how to take. You should be on the fullest part of your bust. This is the bust circumference. You take it. You take the under bust circumference. Under bust is just under the bust now, just after your bust, just like the name implies. After the bust, this is under bust measurement. Under bust measurement. Then what I'm doing now is to tie this waist to actually show you something very practical. Now on the waistline, you're going to measure the waist. They have waist while they have upper hip. This is the upper hip. This upper hip is usually needed when you're making maybe a top or a trouser that is not really high waist. This is the upper hip measurement. This is the waist. So now you go to your hip circumference. You measure your hip. This is hip. The fullest part of the hip. That is where your hip circumference is going to be. Then you take your full length. Full length is from this shoulder to, let's say you're making a short gown, where the short gown is going to reach. The person should tell you the side where you want it to reach. Then you're making a long gown, you take it down to the length of the person, where the person wants it to reach. Or let's assume you're making a top. You can decide to make, you choose where you want your top to be, 23, 21, 20, whatever you want to make. If you're making, then now we move over to the half length. The reason why I type this now is to show you that the front half length and the back half length can never be the same. There's a bust in front while there is no bust at the back. Now I tied here, this is where this my dummy's waist is. Now for the front half length, she has 18. This is 18 inches for her. Now then if we turn it back to get the half length for the back on this line that we have tied, now we have 14 inches here. That is to show you that for this my dummy baby girl sorry I call her my dummy baby girl. For this my dummy baby girl, the difference between the front and the back is 4 inches, because there is bust in the front. So if you cannot really start tying your client something around the waist to actually get the difference, you can just with your eyes just do it like this, take it back and do. Or better, if you're not able to measure it, or maybe they sent you the measurement online and you didn't tell the person, or the person doesn't know how to do it, you can just use your senses. Just maybe 2 inches difference, 3 inches difference, 4 inches difference. Depends on the person's height and the person's body shape, so that you won't make mistake. But please do not make the front and your back half length equal. It is not possible. It is not possible, please. Now that we're done with that, we move over to measuring. This is shoulder to under bust. This is the under bust. You need these measurements well when you are making maybe a padded bust here, maybe a corset, padded bust, the braces, that and the rest of them. You need this measurement. This is the under bust. Our waist shoulder to under bust is 14 inches. Then our shoulder to bust point is 10.5. Bust point is just the nipple now. The nipple 10.5. So you need to take this measurement. Then you also need to check what we call bust span. Or you call this nipple to nipple, or bust point to bust point, or bust point depends on what you want to call it. Or maybe if you're watching an online video and they call it anything, just know that they are still talking about the same thing. So you just from this point of the nipple to the other point. It is also needed when you are sewing a padded bustier, corset or princess that it is also needed. Now if you're making a corset, very important, this is very important measurement you will need in your corset. Please don't forget this. From this end, this is the end of this bust. From the end of this bust now to the end of this one, you will need to take this measurement. It is called across bust. Across bust. This person's across bust is 16 inches. Please don't forget to take it from here to here. Don't forget, from here to here. Take it on your client. Now if the client wants an off shoulder corset, normally most corsets are off shoulder. You're making an off shoulder top, blouse or gown. Please, you need to take this very important measurement also. It is called off shoulder start, or you call it chest line. Now this is from the shoulder to where your client wants their off shoulder to start. For this my dummy baby girl, now she can decide to make hers 6 inches, or you can decide to make hers 5.5. Everybody's measurement is not the same. There are some persons that will measure their off shoulder start or chest line is 8, while some person's own is 9, some person's own is 10, and some persons that want cleavages to really show, you need to measure them so you don't finish. So the person is telling you that you're making her look like a mommy GO or a church person. Please measure them so they can tell you this is where I want mine to start, or let's start from here. You do it for them. Now you need to measure your round off shoulder. Round off shoulder is just round. Let's assume this dummy has a hand. Just measure it like, okay, let me use myself and show you. The round off shoulder is just like this. Round off shoulder is like this. This is what we call round off shoulder. Round off shoulder, because when you're making off shoulder top, you need to know the perfect measurements you use to put both the sleeve and to get this shoulder line and everything. You will need it, so you should get your round off shoulder too. Now you need to measure what we call hip line, from this waist to the fullest part of the hip. This is the waist. Okay, let me tell you like this. This is the waist. From waist to the fullest part of the hip is your hip line. So for this my dummy baby girl, the fullest part of her hip is 9.5. So her hip line is 9.5. Now if you're making a hip padded top or skirt, or hip padded skirt actually, or gown, you will need to take this very important measurement also. The one we call waist to under butt. This is the under butt, under her bum bum. Waist to under butt. So you can do it like this, or you can do it from the back, or you can also do it like this from here, from this side. Just make sure it is rhyming. Waist to the under butt. This under butt, you need it well when you're drafting your hip padding. Now if you're making a trouser, let's assume the trouser is high waist. Just ask your client, or you're measuring, ask yourself where the high waist should start from. If it's here, you know. If it's here, you know. Then the high waist to the length of the trouser, which is can get to the end like this. It can be a knicker, anywhere. Now if you're making a jumpsuit, start from here and measure down, which is the length of your jumpsuit. Now you will need to measure this thigh measurement when you are making a trouser. This is called thigh measurement, or you call it lap. Some people call it lap, but this is thigh. You measure it like this. Just after the crotch, measure it like this. It needs to be measured when you are making a trouser. Measure it this way, okay? Then you measure your round knee. Round knee is important too. If it's a fitted trouser, you just make it fitted. If it's maybe a free trouser, it shouldn't really be tight that much. It's you that know how free you want it to be. Now if there are different ways to get your crotch measurement while making a trouser. You can get your crotch measurement by dividing the person's hip by 4. So if the person's hip is 40, then 40 divided by 4 will give you 10. So automatically the person's crotch is 10. But if you have strength and you want to measure, now just from here, take your measurement to this place. This is the crotch. This is the person's crotch. Now if it is high waist, or wherever the trouser is starting from, just as if trouser is starting from here, you take it down like this. Check. Is it reaching? You still check. This is the crotch line. Just measure it till you are sure you have gotten to this line, this crotch line. That is how to also measure your crotch. If you're making a jumpsuit, you can also measure your crotch like this till you get to this place. You can also measure it like that.